SLATE recently received an award from the Department of Justice for more than $350,000, and the agency plans to use that money to help fund its YOLO program. We're going to learn more about that coming up next on City Corner. I'm Sarah Thompson, and welcome to City Corner. Today we're going to talk with SLATE, with the Executive Director Michael Holmes and Alice Prince, who's the Youth Services Manager. Now, the whole context for this is SLATE just received a grant from the Department of Justice for more than $350,000, which they're going to use, or plan to use, to fund the You Only Live Once St. Louis Reentry Program. So we're going to talk about that today, learn a bit more about what the plan is for this program. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
And I should say, by the way, congratulations. That's a big deal. Receiving a $358,000, I believe, or a little bit more.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes. So, I mean, we're happy about it. It is something that the city of St. Louis really needed in order to help our youth really look at what they're doing here in the city of St. Louis. With the police department, the mayor's office, the prosecuting attorney's office, we got together and really wanted to say, what can we do as a city agency to help youth really be a diversion for crime for them, because all of our kids are not bad. Yes, we have a few, but we have a lot of good kids. And what are some of the programs? So we talked with the mayor's office, the mayor himself, and said, well, what can we do as a youth program? We're understanding SLATE is more than a youth program. 30 years ago, everybody knows SLATE because, they got their first job. Now we have become a holistic program. We're not just youth, we're adult, we're dislocated worker, we're veterans. We serve everybody who needs our service from 16 all the way up to 90. If you need a job and you want a career, you can come in and see us. So this grant is going to help youth in our communities not only get training in Pacific areas, but also work experience. So this is something the city said we should go for, and we did it, and we were successful. So we're happy.
No, that's fantastic. Alice, tell me a bit about, so YOLO is kind of the abbreviation for it, but You Only Live Once St. Louis Reentry Program. Specifically, tell me, what is the goal of this program? What exactly is it?
Okay, so the goal of the program is to work with the youth who are already in the family court system or who have been in the family court system. We want to help set them on the right path, on the pathway to prosperity, so that they don't get in any more trouble. We don't want our youth going back into the system. We want to decrease the recidivism rate. So the program has a very intense behavior modification, so we can really try to change attitudes. And then we align those positive attitudes and positive behaviors with what they need to be successful in school, and then that aligns and transfers to what they need to be successful on a job or short-term training or any type of post-secondary education.
I want to bring up, and I appreciate that description, because this is an interesting point that we're at right now, because you're actually seeking, is that correct? You've received the grant, but seeking a community organization to help execute that. Tell me a bit about the phases, because this is one of multiple grants you've received. So if you want to explain, Michael, for us where you're at with this.
Well, we will be sending out a request for proposal. We'll be looking for community-based organizations to really implement this program for us, or businesses that work with youth to implement the program. We will send out a request for proposal. We'll have a meeting in which it's going to be a required meeting to come and talk about the proposal before we set it out. And we'll give it out maybe 10, 20 days where a person can look at it and respond to it. And we'll have a specific time that it has to be in. Right now, we were getting that process together. And so we will be sending it out through local newspapers. We'll send it to TV 10 to advertise, because what we want is as many proposals as possible so we can choose the best proposal. And then what we'll do is announce I'm quite sure the mayor will announce who that lucky organization would be to get that award.
Okay, we have some photos from the summer that actually were about the announcement of another grant that you received for a similar program. Before we look at the photos, Alice, tell me about that specific program, because it's similar but still different.
Right. So this grant that we're talking about now is reentry. We are getting kids that are already in the family court system, and we don't want them to come back. For the grant that we got a couple months ago was we're still targeting a high risk population, but we want to divert them from the system. So it's a diversionary program.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the photos that we had. I think this was really taking a look at the, well, I'll let you take it over to describe who's there.
That is the announcement of the program. Well, it's 2 grants in this program. Father Support Center is the second guy from the left. He received a grant for $1.4 million to help ex-offenders. And we are part of that SLATE because we will be intaking individuals. Also, we announce our diversion program. We'll be working with youth who are already in the system, juveniles. And so the mayor announced also that grant. So at that press conference you're seeing on the television now, it is 2 grants that were announced for our youth and adult. One for youth and one for adult services.
I see. And I think our next photo is...
So this photo really marks a distinct relationship that we have with St. Louis Public School System. Beaumont has a great technical and occupational certification department, and SLATE works along with the Beaumont students as they work towards their certification in areas like culinary arts and construction. We then try to find them work experience that parallels with the education that they're receiving over at Beaumont. So this marks a very dynamic relationship that we have with education and workforce working hand in hand.
Okay, all right. This is probably back to the press
That's
conference?
back to the press conference, the mayor making a statement of how important these type of grants are to the city of St. Louis. Because again, we are a city agency. Although Father Support is a not-for-profit, they partner with us because they are the lead in their grant on the $1.4 million, and we are just a partner in that grant.
I see. I think probably the next photo is going to be, we have a little bit more of another from the press conference. This looks, is this jumping back to Beaumont, or?
This actually is at the press conference too. This was this was a student from an ICA Academy, just talking about how important education, workforce, and just organizations giving you the chance to succeed and set them back on the right track.
Okay.
This particular photo is at a youth council, is at our youth council meeting, where we have a youth council that's citywide, that's made up of a number of organizations that offer their expertise to youth.
Okay.
And so this is professional development at one of our youth councils. At our youth councils, we routinely make sure we invite youth because we want their voice in our framework. We want to make sure that we are listening to them and responding to their needs. So this is youth speaking up at one of our youth council meetings. This is another youth just telling his story about working towards our workforce program and how important it is to have a job and to be able to provide for himself and his family.
Okay. I think when I was reading about the grant and about the YOLO program, and I see this a lot more with nonprofits and just studies, is the tracking. You phrase it as a comprehensive evidence-based program, and I believe you're partnering with Missouri State University on it. I hear this a lot from nonprofits that more and more it is evidence-based. To continue on, you have to look critically at the work that you're doing, how successful it is, or if it's not working. So tell me a bit more about what kind of data they're going to be looking for, or why this is important when you're doing these types of programs.
So we're tracking it a couple different ways. As you mentioned, we are very excited to be partnering with Missouri State University. Dr. Garland, who is an expert on youth reentry for our region and nationwide. Actually, he's noted nationwide for all the articles and research that he's done. So we do want to make sure that we're using the right assessments and the right data to say, hey, are we doing things right? And how do we know we're doing them right? What evidence can point to that? And if we're not on the right track, what evidence points to it and how we can get on the right track? So Dr. Garland is going to do a quantitative experiment with, and when we say experiment, it's not a human, it's a human experiment, but of course he's getting IRB approval and all of that. But he's using a known assessment called LSI to assess our youth before and after. So before they enter the program and then after they enter the program, so we can talk about and see attitude behaviors. And with the family court system, they'll be tracking to see if there is a recidivism rate, if they do re-enter the juvenile justice system after our program. And for us, our tracking will be with work assessments, academic assessments, and job placement.
I think it's so important because the only way these programs actually have strength over a long term or long period of time is to know what works and what doesn't work. Speaking of that, you mentioned successfully transition, and I'm curious to know what about that from confinement facilities to, to getting back into the community, successful transition. What are some of the things that deter a successful transition for the youth when you look at this kind of program?
So a lot of things do, attitudes and behaviors for them and for their families. So we see a lot if the youth doesn't have a job and if their mom and dad doesn't have a job, just those attitudes and behaviors are transferred to our youth. So we really try to wrap ourselves around the entire family and tell that family to come into SLATE, the adults to come into SLATE to get training, to get job placement, so that it will help their youth. Another thing is answering their immediate need, which is money. So that's why we offer monetary-based incentives for going through our program, as well as work experience where they actually get a real paycheck and they get financial money management programs so that they're able to answer those immediate needs. Other things are adult mentorship. Positive adult mentorship is very important. Leadership development, job readiness training that really helps align their attitudes, behaviors, soft skills with being productive in a school setting as well.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that because I think sometimes when we talk about these programs, we don't really get a face to who they're serving. A lot of it is about the grant and about this, but what's important is the people that are actually being benefited. And we're going to talk more about that after we have a short break, really looking at the youth here in St. Louis, who's going to benefit from this, and really what their stories are. Who are these people who are actually going to participate in the program? We're going to have more right here on City Corner, so please stay with us.
When some people struggle with their mortgage payments, they become frozen, petrified. Not knowing what to do, they do nothing. But the people who take action are far more likely to get the most positive outcome. Making Home Affordable is a free government program. Call now to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about the options that are right for you. Real help, real answers, right now.
Wow, these are really good.
You act surprised. Practice makes perfect.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who don't need perfection. They need you.
Body language can tell you all sorts of things. Like someone is having a stroke. Know the sudden signs. Learn fast. Face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty. Time to call 911 and get them to a hospital immediately. Learn the body language and spot a stroke fast.
Hi, I'm Sarah Thompson, and welcome back to City Corner. Today we're talking with SLATE about a grant they recently received from the Department of Justice that's actually going to help fund the You Only Live Once St. Louis Reentry Program. I'm joined by Michael Holmes, the Executive Director, and Alice Prince, who is the Youth Services Manager. So thanks again for being here.
Thanks for having us.
So I want to continue this discussion with the YOLO program. I sometimes say when we get into the logistics of all this, we really lose track of who's actually being affected or being benefited by such programs. Who would you describe, Alice, as the face, the youth in this program?
Okay. We work with youth that have multiple barriers to employment and just multiple barriers to success. So we work with low-income youth. We work with youth who have offended. We work with homeless youth. We work with teen parents. We work with youth who are in foster care. We work with youth who have disabilities. So, and those youth have multiple barriers to employment or success. So those are our youth. Those are our neighbors, and that's who we work with. We work with at-risk, the most at-risk population, and we want to see them successful.
Mm-hmm. And one thing about it, our youth program, it's the only program that we don't operate ourselves. We do RFPs, requests for proposal, for youth service vendors. And every youth that come into these programs must go through one of the vendors. So it's not coming to SLATE and we put them in the program, because there's an eligibility requirement to get in every program for the youth. So what we want the audience to know, that our youth vendors are who they need to go through. And we have around about 5 youth vendors. They are JESS, which is Alternative Opportunities here in the city. We have MERS Goodwill. We have, who else?
FWCA.
FWCA. And Employment Connection. Okay. So each youth that want to get into a workforce investment program must go through those youth vendors, and they will determine their eligibility in getting in the programs.
No, and I appreciate you clarifying that, because I think I was saying off camera, SLATE does so much that sometimes you don't know, the average person doesn't know specifically what programs you're hands-on doing the day-to-day, or if you're overseeing the contractors or partners that you have involved. What I think is interesting is, sometimes you'll pick up the paper, or you'll go online, read stories, and if it's a youth who's done some crime, whether it's a petty crime or dropout rates, education stories, and you look at the comments section, which is always a toxic area to go, but people are like, why doesn't this kid go get a job? Why don't they go to college? And no one ever looks at the circumstances that they might be living in. Do you feel like with this program, do you feel that there's a connection of the awareness factor? Do you think parents will know where to go? Do you think people within a community will know, church leaders, anyone will know to direct? How will they come to know about this program?
Well, we're hoping the vendor that we are the vendor we choose for this program will go out and market the program to all of those audience, to let individuals know that you can't, this is how you get in, because it's going to be that way, that the vendor we choose on both of our programs. We're going to have vendors that are going to have to market the services to the public school kids, to the kids that are out of school, to the church groups, to the not-for-profits that are already serving some of these youth. Well, because we're only going to take so many youth in, and so each program is going to be limited by the number of youth that can get in the program. So we're hoping that the marketing will take place by not only the city of St. Louis, but also the not-for-profits that are going to be selected.
That are going to be partnering. Now, will there be, we were talking about a legal component to this, if you want to tell me about that?
We are looking at a legal component because we want to make sure that the parents and the kids understand their rights. So we're trying to figure that piece out. We have funding to do a modified version of almost like an attorney clinic. So we got to work that piece out to figure out, are we going to do an RFP, or are we going to go to some of the legal clinics that are in town and see if we can do a contract. But if it's a not-for-profit, a 501c, we have to do an RFP. The only ones that we can do a direct contract with is an education quasi-governmental agency. So we're trying to figure the piece out on the legal piece, and I'm quite sure we'll be talking to the city's legal, the prosecuting attorney, to see what's the best way to do that, because we want it to be independent.
I think it's interesting where you were talking about recidivism earlier, and that this program would drop that, would have a 10%, I think is the estimation, immediately, and then long term a 50% drop. If these programs are not in place, tell me, is there any kind of study, or do you see how recidivism increases if there is not a program such as this?
Right, definitely. Programs with strong behavior modifications, studies have shown they decrease recidivism. So our program is very unique that not only does it have that strong behavior modification, it's working with the youth before they even get out of their incarcerated situation, and it's giving them wraparound services, great case management. SLATE is set up to help their families so that they can really stop that cyclical dependency theory where that mentality is transferred down to the youth. So we're helping the family as well. We're putting other components like mentorship, academic tutoring, leadership development into place, and then we're really answering their most immediate need for wanting money. So we're giving them a job that will work on developing the soft skills that they need to be successful.
And on the reverse side, if we're doing this for the youth, then we're hoping that that family, that guardian, because it may not be the mother or the father, it could be a guardian, that they come into SLATE, they're the adults, that we can work with them to get them on the path to developing a career. At the same time, their kid or their nephew or their grandson is looking, or granddaughter is looking for, we're going to put them in employment, that we can look at that guardian and say, what can we help you with at the same time? So, but at a different location.
Well, I like that this covers sort of its life skills, academics, so many components. You know, I feel recently I've read a lot, and I don't know if this is kind of coming out of left field, but if you had any comments about it, about mental health and the role that mental health plays with juveniles, essentially, that, I mean, is there a change? Do you feel that, I don't know if that's a component of this program, but the awareness factor about a lot of kids who do end up in situations, it's because they have undiagnosed or unaddressed mental health issues sometimes, and it's not being helped and it's not being addressed. So tell me, I don't know if this program is, or anything else that you're working on.
It does. So when we wrote this program and put this program together, we really wanted it to be an all-inclusive wraparound program. So we are very excited to have partners like People's Health Clinic and Preferred Family that really answers that immediate need for mental health, as well as for drug and alcohol abuse, because we know for a fact that our youth do deal with those types of issues. So when they come in, they will be assessed, and so we will work with them. Each youth will have an independent service strategy to, to gain success and to reach their goals for our program. So you are right about mental health.
And what we're saying is, again, with the federal government, Department of Justice giving us this opportunity, this is going to be an opportunity for us to grow this program, to see if it can be self-sustaining on its own, but making sure we have the right partners at the table, because the federal government doesn't want a program just for a year or 2 years. They want to know, well, once we give you a start, can you sustain this program? And that's where we're going to count on our partners to help us with this, and the city.
No, I think that's important because it's finding the formula first that works, and then if you do find the right formula, then yeah, you want it to go on and on and on. So is the idea that how much does this grant do you think will fund? How long will it?
I was gonna say that it's for a year now, but if we have successful outcomes, it will be renewable, and we will be able to help more youth and bring it, and have our scale grow larger. I think it's important to note that although we got a little over $350,000, a large portion of those funds going back into the youth's pocket. So that is so important, that it's not administrative top heavy. The partners that we're working with, they're leveraging their own resources. We're leveraging resources to really make this program work for the youth. So the majority of the funds are going back to the youth's pocket.
And the advisory council,
and
the advisory board.
We have a great advisory board.
We have a great advisory board. We have our chair of our youth services council. We have the police chief, Sam Dotson. We have the prosecuting attorney. We have Judge Mason, who's over the juvenile. So we're looking at them also to give us some guidance on, one, if the program is doing well, what are some of the pitfalls the program is going in, so we can be able to document that and change and then be able to grow the program.
Absolutely.
So that's going to be key.
It's a step in the right direction. I mean, really, it's a step in the right direction. And again, going back to the comprehensive component of it, and you're also going to be looking at the data, tracking everything that you're doing to know what works, what doesn't work, and how it's going to really help young people in this town. Where can people go for more information about this, since we're talking about it?
Our website, www.stlworks.com.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you for being here. I think sometimes it's, you hear the announcements of these programs, and I think the public sometimes doesn't know where it's going to go. It's like, oh, we got a grant, and then it just sort of goes off, goes off. So I really appreciate you coming here today to talk about it. And again, for more information on the You Only Live Once program that's going to be enacted, the grant was granted earlier this year, and they're in the process of executing it. You can again head to the website, and we'll have that information for you. So thank you again for joining me on the show, and thank you at home for watching us on City Corner, and please keep it right here on STL TV.